Hi, friends. My name is Haley Ballast, and I am the lead on the John Knox Thriving Congregations team. The Thriving Congregations Initiative is sponsored by the Seattle Presbyterian and funded by a grant from the Lilly Foundation. And it is a program designed to help churches get to know their communities better, to ask questions about where they see God at work in the community, and to form partnerships for sustainable mutual transformation. And this process is something that John Knox has been participating in for the last 2 years, nearly a year and a half. And this past week, we had a brunch where we shared a little bit about what we have been learning together as a community. So I wanted to take the opportunity to share that information here in this video for those of you that were not able to be at the brunch with us. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a slideshow that we saw in the brunch. You'll notice that these slides are both in English and Spanish, as we are doing this project together with Iglesia Misión, the Spanish-speaking part of John Knox. So our question is, where do we see God moving? We asked this question of the congregation in 3 Sundays during October and November. You may have seen our table in the atrium. We had some snacks, and we asked you to write down your answers to questions about where you see God at work in your life, in the life of this church, and also out in the wider community. We gathered those answers and we saw some themes emerging. You told us that you see God at work in your workplace, in your families, through community partners. But the biggest answer, the most common answer that we got to this question was that in our church, we see, in our lives, in our church, in our community, we see God at work through kids and youth. And this was such an encouraging answer to us, because as we have been learning about the community that John Knox is located in, we have found some really amazing overlaps between where the church is seeing God at work and where the community is around us and what's going on in that community. So we've been exploring this through a series of questions. And these questions are around our history. Who have we been as a church? So we spent quite a bit of time gathering some stories and gathering information about the history of John Knox. What are the values that shaped this community at its beginning? And we've asked, who are we now? What is the identity that we hold in the community now? And to get at that, these 2 highlighted questions of understanding where we are geographically. We all know that South King County has changed dramatically over the last decade. So we want to understand, what do those changes mean for a church that is right here at the corner of First Avenue and Normandy Road? And as we look at that, we want to ask, who else is here? Who is here with us? Who is around us? And once we understand those questions a bit better, we can move on to those bottom 2 questions around needs and challenges, gifts and resources, looking at what does it mean to be in relationship with our community. And so we looked at the Highline School District, and you can see in the middle of this, kind of the smack middle of this image, is a red dot, and that is John Knox. We are pretty much in the exact middle of the Highline School District. The purple color that we're right there on the edge of, that is the Mar Vista boundary. And Mar Vista boundary is the largest north-south elementary school in the district. And we are a little bit toward the north end of that area. And then we'll zoom in a little bit. You can see the red dot is still John Knox. The blue emblem down near the bottom of the screen is Mar Vista itself, the school. And then we've highlighted these areas because as we've been doing some research and looking at these questions of where are we and who else is here, we were surprised, and maybe you will be too, that the most densely populated part of Normandy Park is right next to John Knox. And not only that, but the boundaries for Mar Vista extend across First Avenue East. And these highlighted areas are very high density housing where 1/4 of Mar Vista students reside, which means that 1/4 of Mar Vista students reside right next door to our church. And so it's really amazing to see that our church already understands that God is at work through youth and kids. And we just so happen to be located right where a whole bunch of kids already live. Now, Mar Vista is our nearest elementary school. And again, the kids that live directly next to our church go to largely our zone to go to Mar Vista Elementary School. So we shared some quick statistics about Mar Vista. I'll just invite you to pause the video if you want to read this slide. You can find this information at publicschoolreview.com. But we find this information to be really helpful in understanding. And maybe for those of you who've lived in Normandy Park for a long time or lived in this area or raised your kids here, this slide might have information that surprises you. And that just has to do with how our community has changed in the last couple of decades. And it's something that we have to keep learning about. We can't learn about our community once and then let 20 years go by and not ask more questions. So we're in this process of asking more questions. And part of how we're doing that is by getting into relationship with some of the folks in this photo. So in the middle there, you'll see Principal Maggie Heater, Assistant Principal Wayne Hoskins. They're getting ready to get sprayed with silly string as part of a contest that the school did earlier in the year. We've been meeting with Maggie and Wayne, and we're excited to share with you some of the things that we're hearing as we meet with folks at Mar Vista. We are also meeting with the PTSA and some other community partners that are investing in youth and families. And what we're hearing as we listen to these community leaders, these are trusted community leaders that those highlighted areas, the folks that live right next door to Mar Vista, these are known folks. These are trusted leaders. And these leaders are saying to us at John Knox, we want to be in relationship. They are noticing that we have a lot in common. We both deeply care about the youth in our community. And we know that we have a lot to share with one another. We have different gifts, different resources, different exposure, different experiences. We have a lot to learn from one another. What we're also hearing, and you can skip back to that previous slide with the statistics, is that this is a school that really needs support. There are students that are way behind academically. There are students that are not able to participate in after-school activities because that's not something that's being offered right now. And there are lots of reasons for that. But the bottom line is that there's an opportunity here for a relationship with the people in our community in a way that makes a sustainable and lasting difference. That we are called to love our neighbors as Christ loved us. And we believe that there's some really amazing possibilities down the line. And so we're asking our church, John Knox, would you reflect with us? Would you pray with us about this? And at the brunch, we asked folks to write down answers to this question of what they heard in that presentation that surprised them or caught their attention. And then this question here, where do you see God inviting our congregation to jump in? And I want to encourage you, when you think about this jumping in, resist the temptation to assume that we have the answers to these questions, but we want to invite you to consider this jumping in to be jumping into learning and relationship, rather than jumping into programs or solutions, jumping in to this opportunity to know one another, to be present to one another, and to see the image of God in the faces of our neighbors. And so I invite you, if you would like, to comment on this post and tell us where you see God inviting our congregation to jump in, and also to stay tuned, stay listening to what our team will continue to share and the opportunities that do arise, especially moving into the new year. Thank you so much.